welcome back. We are about to have some breaking news coming in right now, right from Russia, and we have stuff that's going on in the United States as well. Don't want to miss this. Let's get to it.
Different news tonight. In fact, it seems like Putin wants to get in on the fun tonight. It looks like Putin has declared that Europe is now waging what he calls open war on Russia, according to Lavrov, that is. And also, U.S. forces have deployed fighter jets near Iranian airspace, and we've seen that near the Persian Gulf. And also, there's been massive attacks tonight inside of mainland Russia by Ukraine, and we have all that and more. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world as our attention is now shifted out of the Middle East and the ongoing tensions and ongoing crisis with the Strait of Hormuz and on into Europe as significant statements were made today by the Russian Foreign Ministry at the behest of the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and additional statements were also made by the President of the French Republic and also that of the Republic of Poland as well, suggesting that war is only several months away with the Russian Federation. As the Russian Federation's Foreign Ministry has alleged or largely attacked the Europeans with today, the Europeans have been stated by the Russians to be in an open war with the Russian Federation and actively aiding and abetting in the interest of themselves and the collapse of the Russian Federation as a result. While this statement was made simultaneously within France and Poland, the French President Emmanuel Macron stated that the time for Europe to be able to choose between peace and war has now passed and that choice is largely out of their hands and that they must be prepared to take any and all actions necessary for their unified survival against a severe existential threat, the Russian Federation. And at the same time, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Poland, Donald Tusk, also stated that according to Polish intelligence and collective European intelligence, it is believed that the Russian Federation may be preparing to launch a war within the next months, and we may be seeing that a larger ground conflict between the European Union and the Russian Federation may commence at any point at this time, months from now. The European Union is already trying to conduct drastic actions to be able to create a collective defensive alliance very similar to NATO, but not including the United States of America, in case of the United States of America was to attempt to try and sabotage the European collective defense position in the midst of an ongoing offensive or a larger attack by the Russian Federation if that hypothetical scenario is to eventually happen, which it does appear that many European leaders and the Russian Federation are largely all telegraphing it will definitely be happening at some point here, possibly, highly likely within this year. We have also been able to hear that simultaneously the Ukrainian armed forces have been causing significant damage to the Russian Federation's armed forces throughout the entirety of the front lines over the course of the day, with major drone attacks raining hell behind the occupied territories and also inside the Russian Federation itself, causing significant damage to the Russian military and also the Russian economy's money-making abilities as key industries have once again been hit, including those inside of Dagestan. Many people have heard the old saying, send to Dagestan 3 years and forget, but it doesn't really appear that there are many people who are going to be forgetting what's happened in Dagestan today, as significant attacks happened on the Russian town of Kaspisk, just south of Makhachkala, which does appear to be causing significant damage to additional Russian Federation military and economic capabilities that are around the area of that port city. The port of Tuapse has also started to enter what can only be described as a living hell, as oil is now raining from the skies in volume so large that it looks like the BP oil spill from the Gulf of Mexico down there on the coastline of the city of Tuapse. The sea has literally turned black with the oil that is raining from the skies above, and the thick plumes of oil smoke which continue to belch out over the city have caused a general atmosphere and landscape of untold desolation and destruction around the areas of the city. Currently, the Russian Federation is attempting to deal with the situation, but it does appear that this crisis is well beyond the Russians' capabilities to be able to largely fend against or stop, and it appears that the fires will continue to rage out of control and continue to turn the city of Tuapse and its surrounding port coastline into an unbearable and unlivable hellscape of an oil slick. Moving us on out to Tuapse, we've also seen that reports came out that Ukrainian armed forces had been conducting attacks elsewhere and also were able to reclaim the city of Lyman today in shocking reports and developments that is showing that once again the Ukrainian armed forces are conducting successful counterattacks around the area of the Severonsky Forest and continuing to keep the flanks of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk free of any Russian threats. We have also seen that inside the Middle East, with the ongoing situation there, that there has been a significant flight of aerial tankers over the course of the night, and an increased amount of tanker activity within the area of the Ben Gurion airport, and also around the area of air bases inside the United Arab Emirates. On satellite photography, 12 brand new F-18Cs of the United States Marine Corps have been spotted just south of Abu Dhabi in a military airbase, once again showing that the U.S. Armed Forces are continuing to build up military strength in possible preparation for continued armed strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Meanwhile, the Iranians are still claiming that they will not be talking to the United States, and their visit of Abbas Araghchi to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is not to speak to the United States of America, but simply to go talk to the Pakistanis over something. And they have also stated that any communications that the United States would like to have with Iran should be forwarded to the Pakistanis, and they've largely given us the talk to the hand treatment as of today. We've also been able to see that inside the Strait there has been plans for further economic actions and sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the Iranians claimed that they were able to see another merchant ship today somewhere within the Strait of Hormuz. We have also been able to hear that Colombia and Venezuela have now announced that they'll be preparing actions to combat and fight against the mafias within their country, which are largely the cartels, including Tren de Aragua and others that are found inside of Venezuela and Colombia. We have also been able to hear some additional details as well out of the United States of America's capital that the Jones Act, which largely has created a economic bubble for U.S. shipping companies to thrive in the U.S. port-to-port shipping transfers, has also been extended for another 90 days, which will continue to see that the U.S. companies that have thrived in that sort of an environment may continue to be significantly weakened and eventually destroyed by the over-competitiveness of other foreign shippers entering the market and now rapidly dropping prices and shipping rates from one U.S. port to the next. But we have a significant amount of news to cover over the course of this night, and we are going to be making sure to get through it, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And we finally, folks...
Isn't it a bit crazy, though? Out of all this news we've been covering out of the Middle East, and, that's a big crisis happening right now in the Middle East. Now we're hearing Poland say that World War III might be just months away. I mean, that's what they're saying today. And we're hearing Russia make wild statements that Europe's waging open war on their country. And we're also hearing France prepare to do simulated nuclear strikes on Russia. So while all this stuff's happening down the Middle East, the Europeans and the Russians are about to basically go to blows with each other for the most part. So that's a pretty two big crises happening at the same time.
It really is. It's absolutely insane. But moving us on into that major news, so that way we can tell everybody out there tonight, because we have a huge amount of people here already, what's been going on around the world. It is time for us to get on into all of this news, starting in Moscow. Every journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And ours tonight is going to be beginning in Moscow, as we were able to hear an official statement from the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov. According to him, the Russian foreign minister, which is himself, has claimed that the West is trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia and is using Ukraine as a tool. A direct quote from his speech is that the Kyiv regime is being used as a spearhead. Without Western weapons, intelligence, satellite data, and training, it would be completely helpless. He added that any illusions of peaceful coexistence with the West are now gone, and when exactly did they have those illusions is what next to ask, and I've got to be entirely honest, I've got to ask the same question. When in the world over the past 4 years have they ever thought that Europe would want to peacefully coexist with the Russians, considering that the Russians have made peaceful coexistence an absolute impossibility? But these statements from the Russian Federation once again today are starting to ramp up the warlike rhetoric that the Russian Federation has been largely declaring throughout the past few months, and is continuing to show that the Russian Federation is trying to build up a plausible scenario to where they could start a war with the European Union. We have heard many statements from lower Russian officials, minor members of the Duma, and some other Russian city officials as well that have been stating that they would generally like to go to war with the West, but we've never seen that these sorts of statements have been echoed at the highest echelons of the Russian government, particularly that of the Russian Foreign Ministry and Vladimir Putin, until very recently entering into this year in the winter of 2025. We started to see that a lot of the statements being made by Vladimir Putin and his foreign ministry started to become a lot more pointed at the West and largely trying to build what would be called a casus belli, which is Latin for a reason for war, against the European Union and NATO to be able to start a larger conflict. Currently, what we understand here on the channel is that the Russian Federation militarily has suffered woefully inside of Ukraine, and its economy is in a dwindling and weakened state at this moment, which is continuing to deteriorate with each passing year that the war in Ukraine grinds on with no conclusion in sight. With these two factors in mind, the Russian Federation's strategic position is incredibly grave, if not perilous, especially for the central Russian government under Putin's control. We believe that Vladimir Putin and his inner circle view the Russian Federation's current government, with him at the helm, as being the only Russian government that can exist, which will largely fall in line with a sort of mindset or logic that dictators usually possess. With this idea in mind, the fact that the Russian military has been heavily destroyed inside of Ukraine and greatly diminished in its combat and fighting capabilities, and the Russian economy is on a very knife's edge of collapse, this is starting to jeopardize the position and safety of that central Russian government which Putin is in charge of, meaning that in some future hypothetical scenarios, if the Russians do not take drastic actions from this point, there may be an attempted coup d'etat inside the Russian Federation against the Putin regime, which may be successful in overthrowing him, imprisoning him, executing him, or exiling him, meaning that it would be the end of him and his government along with most of his yes-men and supporters. This is a situation that they're largely not willing to accept from what we understand, and this is leading them to try and become fairly creative in trying to reach some sort of a conclusion that will ensure that the Putin government remains alive as long as he's living, and to also see that Russia may be able to recover its woefully deteriorated strategic position at some point right now. And that largely leads us into an idea that they may be preparing for some sort of a possible war with NATO. It appears likely so that that definitely is the case, and while many people would say, and have said for quite a while, Enforcer, that makes no sense. You're saying that the Russian military has been completely destroyed for the large part inside of Ukraine and has been greatly weakened compared to what they were in their pre-war state. Why in the world would they start a war with NATO, considering that they would obviously lose a conventional ground war? And that is in where the magic lies. The Russian Federation does not have to win the ground war to be able to achieve significant diplomatic concessions that would lead to their advantage and also lead to the possible stabilization of the Putin regime. They just have to start a shooting war that would then allow them to state that there is an existential threat to the Russian state, which then allows the Russian Federation to seriously threaten the use of nuclear weaponry at the tactical level at a minimum, which would start to put significant pressure on Europe that either they accept that a tactical nuclear exchange at a minimum will occur and millions will die in the process, and significant amounts of economic abilities within Eastern Europe will most likely be destroyed in that tactical nuclear exchange that would happen on the battlefield, and in the worst case scenario, it may even evolve into a strategic nuclear exchange, which leads to the entire destruction of most of the industrialized portions of Europe and most of the major population centers within the Russian Federation. That is something that generally is, a decision that's not easily taken by most government officials. If you ask around, most people are going to say, I don't really want to die, especially in a nuclear hellfire. And while we do understand that the Russian public would be of a similar mindset, Putin's government is largely viewing that regardless of whether they die in a nuclear hellfire, or whether they're executed by a Russian firing squad by a new Russian provisional government, or if they're exiled to China even, or some other foreign country, that may as well be as good as dead at that point. And that may be the reason why they're starting to seriously consider a war with NATO, because by doing that, getting back around to why that war would happen, with them threatening nuclear war, there would be significant pressure on the European states, at a minimum if the US isn't involved, to be able to try and negotiate their way out of the conflict and possibly even give significant concessions to the Russian Federation to see that they are able to avoid some form of a tactical nuclear exchange or a nuclear war. If that is the case, the Russian Federation may be able to see that most of the crippling sanctions that have been put on them so far may be lifted, and they may be able to even see that they're able to get some sort of financial or material assistance in recovering their economic base to be able to see that the Russian Federation's economy stabilizes, and therefore the government's position may stabilize as well. That appears to generally be the game plan that we're thinking is in the Russian Federation's central government's mindset at this moment at the forefront, and it also appears that from what we've been able to see from other European leaders today, and the intelligence that they have not disclosed from behind the scenes but have given a general synopsis of what it's starting to tell them and show them, it appears that it's very similar to what we're believing here on the channel. But a lot of people are actually talking about this statement that was made today by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, stating that Europe had declared war on the Russian Federation and Russia is in an open state of war with the entirety of Europe. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so this is actually a pretty big deal because we've been covering this on and off throughout the Iran coverage, but the Russians have been making up all kinds of narratives that would basically allow a war to take place on the Baltic states, which are NATO members. And now we're hearing Russia's taking it to the ultimate step of saying that Europe's waging an open war against the Russian Federation and that Ukraine is the spearhead of the operation, but Europe is going to take it a step further by trying to attack Russia directly through the Baltics. So obviously, that's pretty crazy. The one who made that statement today was Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia. He was the one on camera saying that, and of course, he speaks for the Putin regime. So essentially, it's Putin saying that. So what is going to happen now that they're saying this wild statement? What do you think is going to happen next? 51% said Russia will simply only test NATO, and that'll be it, while 33% said Russia will attack NATO in months, and 7% said Russia will attack NATO in years. So we've heard some very disturbing warnings coming out of Europe today, and I mean very disturbing. We're hearing France, they're warning that something's coming very soon. We're hearing the Polish top officials say that World War III could start in merely months instead of years, which is obviously concerning. And we're also hearing the Baltic states warn that they feel they're about to be attacked by Russia, and all the war preparations are in place for the Russians to launch some sort of attack or raid into one of the Baltic state countries. So I would say this is a pretty big prediction to make, but at this point, I think it's fair enough to make it. I'm with the 33%. I think Russia's planning to attack one of the Baltic states within mere months. And that's like I said, it's a very big prediction to make. But what we're seeing right now is literally textbook Russian behavior for a preemptive attack on a country. That's what they're doing right now. And they're setting up the forces. They're building up fire groups in the Kaliningrad region, also St. Petersburg. That's a huge red flag as well. And also, they're creating a big ruckus inside of Kaliningrad itself and building up forces there as well. So, the war narratives are there, the preparations are in place. So I think they're planning something, and we could be seeing that a lot sooner than expected. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with the 34% as well. We have generally given the idea throughout most of the war, because it was an accurate assessment at that point, that a deranged war with the Russian Federation would be highly unlikely and would most likely happen in several years' time. And we made those statements years ago, and have been making those statements consistently over the years, given the condition of the Russian Federation and how much progress they've been making in the war in Ukraine. The Putin regime is hell-bent on achieving their goals of creating the Ruski Mir, which is called the Russian world in English. And that means that they still have a significant strategic ambitions that lie outside of Ukraine in the Baltics and Poland that they have not realized yet with their failing war in Ukraine. Not only that, their economic situation is so bad that the Russian government is in a great state of instability. We're even seeing that inside of Russia, it cannot be denied that Putin is falling out of favor with the Russian public. And we're also seeing that the Russian military, in some instances or another, are seeing that their loyalty is being questioned by the central government as well, as they may be understanding through the FSB that there are some words or murmurs of dissent that are now spreading amongst the Russian Federation's armed forces that may be preparing for some attempted coup against the government, or at least significant fears of a coup are now permeating within the central government in Moscow due to the incredibly dire situation they're in and the fact that that's become woefully obvious to everyone, including the Russian citizenry. So they have to take some sort of drastic action at some point here in the future. Otherwise, the Putin regime is most likely going to cease to exist. And that would lead me to believe that a war against NATO by the Russian Federation is fairly likely at this point. And given the fact that there's been a couple of other external developments as well that would heavily favor the Russian position right now, this might actually be their opportune moment to strike. Considering that the United States of America's government has actively gone out of its way to be an antagonistic power to the Europeans, and we've also seen they've started to make it incredibly clear that they now view Europe as some sort of an unfriendly group and are actively working against them in some cases, at least on the diplomatic and political front. We can largely understand that the Russian Federation may be viewing the NATO alliance as fractured, and if the Russian Federation conducts some sort of immediate action, they may be able to capitalize on the inefficacy of the President of the United States to be able to make a rapid decision fast as to whether or not the United States would declare Article 5, and they may even be betting on the idea that the United States would not vote to invoke Article 5 and may not even be involved in the conflict at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing as well. Also, I see a lot of people saying, and fair enough. Like this is a big prediction we're trying to make right here. But we've made predictions in the past about things like this, and we got a lot of flack for it at the time. People were like, "Yeah, that can't happen. That's crazy talk. That to say that's going to happen is like saying that the hell's going to freeze over or something." But we're using what we're seeing right now as evidence. I mean, we're seeing what these war preparations by Russia. We're seeing these narratives being put forth, and all these other things. And remember, it's not too far-fetched for Russia to attack NATO, because I would argue they've already done it. A short while back last year, Russia launched a whole bunch of drones into Poland, which is one of the most highly armored states within NATO near the border of Russia. And, they were attacked by multiple drones. And they invoked the Article 4 conference, Poland did, to address it, and nothing came out of it. So I would argue Russia's already gone a step with attacking NATO by doing that attack on Poland. So, I mean, is it really that far-fetched to say that they're going to attack the Baltics in a similar way, if not worse? I would say that's a lower barrier to entry when starting a conflict than attacking Poland, I would say. So that's why I'm saying it seems likely, and I would agree with Poland on that. That I'm very concerned about it.
I would definitely agree. And not only that, folks, another thing that we have to point out that's quite obvious at this point is that some of the key battlefield areas of Europe right now that Russia would be fighting in off of the bat, like the Baltics, have just announced that the United States has told them that they're not going to be shipping them any additional munitions for the heavily, I guess you could say, present U.S. weapon systems within their arsenal, because the U.S. is diverting all of their arms production and shipments to the U.S. forces in CENTCOM's area of responsibility, which are still preparing to fight an eventual war with Iran that may happen again any day now. So that is starting to show us that if there is a war, a large amount of the Baltic states, which generally are one of the few areas of Europe that did buy all-American, might be screwed over because their all-American equipment is not able to get the all-American ammunition that they rely on to be able to operate properly or to be able to operate at all, meaning that the Baltics may be heavily strapped in a siege to be able to keep up any sort of an effective defense until they're relieved, because their munition stores might run out quickly if the Russians are able to seize the advantage at the very opening of the conflict, which may give the Russian Federation significant gains, or may see that they're able to win major strategic victories on the battlefield against the Baltic states before any relief force is able to break through the Suwalki Gap and start relieving the besieged and embattled Baltic forces. We also understand that the United States not being clearly present to help defend Europe against the Russian Federation could also be leading the Russians to believe that this might be an easier fight than it would be, because if the United States was involved, the Russians would lose without a doubt. There's no way for them to win in a nuclear exchange or a conventional exchange at that point. The Russians would literally be in the pages of history and in extinction, even if they did conduct a strategic nuclear exchange with the West that was able to wipe out most of the population within Europe and North America. On the other hand, though, if it's just Europe, they might be able to have a little bit of a better chance on the battlefield, a slightly better chance. They'd still end up losing conventionally, but they still have a slightly better chance, and they would also be a little bit overmatched compared to Europe's nuclear arsenal once the threat started to come down to that, at least on paper. So that may be another reason why they're seriously considering some sort of a conflict with Europe at this moment right now. It also appears that several European leaders and the European Union itself have started to show that they are believing that this is a high likelihood as well, as the statements came out today from the French President Emmanuel Macron that Europeans have to step up and defend their own interests because the US, China, and Russia are now all dead against them, according to the French president. This appears to also be showing that Macron is not really maneuvering at this point to see that Europe is a sphere is more so a part of a sphere of influence, but he is clearly making in these statements the argument that Europe is a sphere unto itself at this point, and has made it clear that they would not be aligning with the United States or the Communist Chinese, and they certainly wouldn't be aligning with the Russian Federation, considering that is their most imminent threat at the moment right now. And he is claiming that they are all dead against them, and the Europeans now have to be able to prepare actions in their own collective defense to be able to defend themselves against any one of these countries or all three of them, showing that Macron is still making his significant moves as a statesman to be able to try and unify Europe into its own individual sphere of influence with its own global projection power and many other factors involved as well. We have also seen that the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has also made some statements as well today, which I'll read y'all here, which were largely surmised by Dennis, Stillerman, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, here on Twitter. World War III will begin.
Isn't that guy the CEO of Firepoint? The company that makes the flamingos and all that stuff.
Yeah, he is actually.
Oh yeah, I thought that name sounded familiar. That's the guy right there. That is the guy.
That is the guy. But beyond that, he surmised largely summarized what Donald Tusk said today. World War III will begin in a few months. Russia plans to attack NATO countries in that time frame, according to the Prime Minister Donald Tusk. He also doubts the alliance's readiness for war. I can dispel any doubts on this matter right away. NATO is not ready. What's more, it's unlikely to ever be ready. At best, while Russia is invading Poland or the Baltic states, NATO will convene a meeting and decide to send body armor and express its deepest concern. That's according to Dennis. And I would have to say that's generally likely, at least in my opinion. There's a decent likelihood here that NATO may not be ready to react, and we also understand that there's a significant chance that that definitely could be the case. We also understand that there were some additional quotes from Tusk over the course of this day. For the whole of the eastern flank, my neighbors, the question is if NATO is still an organization ready, politically and also logistically, to react, for example, against Russia if they try to attack. This is something truly serious. I'm talking about a short-term perspectives rather than months and years, referring to a potential Russian attack. For us, it really is important to know that everyone will treat the NATO obligations as seriously as Poland. I want to believe that Article 5 is still valid, but sometimes, of course, I have some problems. I don't want to be so pessimistic, but what we need today is also practical context. He also added, I had some problems during the night in September when we had this pretty massive drone provocation made by the Russians. It wasn't easy for me to convince our partners in NATO that it wasn't a random incident. It was a well-planned and prepared provocation against Poland. Those are according to the statements of Donald Tusk today. And it appears highly likely that according to the intelligence that Donald Tusk has received by the collective European security apparatus and also Poland's security apparatus as well, and also the news that the French have gotten, it is appearing quite clear to them that they are in a situation of life or death in Europe, and war is a near certainty, particularly with the Russians. And a lot of people are talking at this moment right now about the statements from the Polish Prime Minister and the statement that he made that a war with Russia could happen in months rather than years. And a lot of people are being asked at this moment whether they agree with the statements of the Polish Prime Minister or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so it looks like about 44% of the audience said they agree with Poland that Russia could attack a NATO member in merely months rather than years, that is. While 31% said Poland is simply trying to rally NATO and they probably don't mean exactly what they're saying. While 19% said it's probably a 50-50 chance that Poland's right, Russia could be about to attack, or they could be wrong about that. So I would say I'm with the 44%. Poland is trying to take the lead right now along with France, which trying to take the reins of NATO, because right now the United States is pretty unreliable when it comes to being a NATO partner, and Europe is starting to really run with that for the most part, and France is probably the spearhead of NATO right now, and I would say Poland's a close runner-up. So it's possible they're trying to rally NATO, but the evidence suggests that what they're saying is backed up with facts. It's not merely rhetoric. I think there's actual evidence behind it. And remember, by the way, we're only getting the evidence that we can see in the public. So this is all based on the reports we're seeing for everybody to view, of course, but I'm sure that they're probably receiving some more intelligence behind the scenes that we're privy to, I would imagine, and it's probably looking a lot more grim than we're even suggesting. So I would say they know what's coming, and I would agree 100% with Poland and also France as well. And this might explain why both Poland and France are taking the very drastic step of simulating nuclear strikes on Russia, because it could be a last-ditch attempt to deter Russia from attacking the Baltic states. That might explain why they're taking such a bold step with that exercise. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 44%. They clearly know what's coming because everybody's been seeing this come around the corner for some time. It's a pretty obvious thing, folks, in my honest opinion, and maybe it's not to some people, but it's fairly clear, at least on my end, that the Russians have been trying to get towards a war. I've explained time and time again on the situation the Russians are viewing and how they're probably analyzing it, and the kind of harebrained, insano concepts that are coming up with that would probably lead to a war with NATO. And a lot of people, and I got to say, folks, way back before the war in Ukraine actually started, I believe that the Russians wouldn't start a war in Ukraine, because as far as it would be Oh, well, as far as it would turn out for the Russian Federation, it would basically be the equivalent of a seppuku for the Russians. They would literally destroy their own country in the process of trying to go to war with NATO. Also, your audio is coming through just fine, Matthew. But they would basically be destroying themselves to try and go to war with Ukraine, and they probably wouldn't achieve a whole lot because their military was not as good as they claimed it was on paper. And that all ended up being actually true. Now, the thing I got wrong, though, was that I thought that the Russians would know that and understand that, and they wouldn't go to war with Ukraine because they would know that as well as anyone else would. And yet they still went to war, which was a completely illogical idea given the facts and the totality of the circumstances that they had going into that conflict. And it's certainly shown to be so 4 years later. That doesn't, like, and a lot of people keep saying right now, and this is something I find really interesting, oh, the Russians clearly wouldn't go to war with NATO because that would be a really stupid idea for them. But that's what everyone, including myself, said before the war in Ukraine started, is that that would also be a stupid war to undergo because it'd be completely pointless for them and it'd be more destructive than it would be beneficial for the Russian Federation. And yet they did it. And so I would generally believe that their game planning and sort of war planning or grand strategy planning is pretty bad and pretty fanciful, if we want to call it that, across the board, where they just fantasize about things and then act upon it. And I would say that it's still highly likely that that's what intelligence agencies in Europe are also hearing as well.
And also, I mean, why wouldn't Russia give it a shot? I'm not advocating for it, obviously, but I mean, what do they have to lose at this point? Their economy is destroyed. Like, their economy is pretty much ruined at this point. If they want to have it recover, it's going to take years and years and years to get their economy back to working order. So that's number one. Number two, their military is basically on a survival mode 24/7. They keep having to scrape guys off the street, throw them into the meat grinder, and they're doing that over and over and over and over again. If they were in a war with NATO, they would literally do the exact same thing that they're doing right now inside of Ukraine. They would just scrape guys up off the street and they throw them into the meat grinder on the front lines. That's what they would do. And also, it's like there's really no way out of this quagmire for Russia. There's no clear exit plan right now, which kind of sounds analogous to what's happening right now in Iran, by the way, with the United States. But there's no clear exit plan for Russia to exit this Ukraine war situation because Ukraine's winning the war. That's the problem. And it's going into its fourth or fifth year. I can't even keep it straight at this point. It's been going on for a very long time. And, you know, I mean, Russia has nothing to lose. They're literally going for broke, as By the Sea said in the chat. And I think that's why they might go for it. They might try to do something drastic in the hope that maybe they can cause enough chaos that they have to force a settlement. That could be part of it.
Yeah, I would have to say, and also I just saw Thomas D'Orazio say, what do the Russians have to gain? Exactly what I was explaining. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's what they're probably thinking. That's probably what they're going to be working off of, because I stated, much like many people, much like a lot of people are saying about this hypothetical scenario now, oh, the Russians would never invade Ukraine, like at least directly. They might do another proxy war in the Donbass or something, but they're sure as hell never going to just directly invade Ukraine, because that'd be absolutely stupid. They'd get sanctioned to hell. They'd be blockaded for most economies around the world. They probably would not do that well in Ukraine. And then they went to war, which made absolutely no sense, and all of those things came true afterwards. A lot of people were saying back then, and this is something that's interesting to me as well, a lot of people were saying back then the Ukrainians wouldn't survive a matter of days. Those were top generals in the United States, top generals in Europe, loads of people around the world. And I was one of the few people, folks, after the first week of watching how it went, that said, I think this is going to go on for a good while longer. And back then people laughed at that and said, oh, there's no way it could go on longer. The Russians, you know, they're a massive military. They're going to grind them down. They're going to win absolutely. And then 4 years later, we're still here covering it, and it's still going on continuously up until this day right now. And a lot like all of those predictions ended up being accurate, and the only one being wrong, which is the most important one, was that the Russians weren't going to go to war because it would be absolutely destructive and detrimental to their state as a nation. This seems to be a fairly similar sort of a formula that we're looking at right now. The Russians are viewing this situation that they have economically and militarily as a do-or-die situation right now. And due to the weakening of the NATO alliance in the Western sphere that the United States has caused at this moment right now, the Russians might be seeing their window of opportunity that will never come back around again if they wait a while. And unlike the President of the United States, which will basically watch the whole U.S. economy crumble under him and just basically lie to the public the whole time saying that it's all fine and we don't even need the strait, the Russians do understand that they're in a position a lot like the U.S., to where if they just allow themselves to keep economically crumbling and they do absolutely nothing, they're not even going to be around to see what happens by the time the economy implodes. The Russians generally are a lot more proactive in that instance than we are. And a lot like here on our channel, we've been talking about the United States needs to start bombing Iran again and ramping up this war if necessary to reopen the Hormuz. The Russians will do an action like that if they think that their government will not exist any longer, if they don't take even the most drastic and insane types of actions, even if the chance of recovery in the process of taking those actions is incredibly slim by a percentage chance. With that, we've also been able to hear that inside of Belgium, the European Union is also drafting plans to defend its borders if any member states are attacked amid concerns over weakening U.S. support. From what we generally understand of this situation at the moment, a large amount of European countries and the European Union are believing that the United States will actually try and stymie or hinder collective defense in Europe if a war starts with the Russian Federation. Currently, most of the NATO charter actually structures itself to where the United States is basically the lead operator of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And if you don't believe me, you can go and read the NATO charter yourself, and you'll see that it basically states anyone who's going to be the supreme allied commander of all NATO forces is almost always going to be, if not guaranteed to be, an American, meaning that we are in control of the military chain of command of NATO for the larger part. And also on top of that, we get significant privileges as well, largely being the organizer of NATO in what they can and cannot do. And so for that reason, the Europeans are somewhat concerned that the United States might sit there and quote-unquote punish them if the Russians start a war. It might try and screw over their own collective defense, even if the United States is not involved in firing a single shot from the first day. With that being said, the Europeans are trying to create a analogous structure to the NATO system that largely excludes the United States and only includes the European states and Canada, considering that Canada is still a reliable military partner if there was a larger war that would start on the face of Europe. So they're currently working on that right now, which I would have to say in my own analysis would be a fairly smart idea because, just being a little bit honest with y'all, seeing the strategic genius of our glorious and enigmatic President of the United States in the Middle East has absolutely seeded no confidence in my mind whatsoever that he would understand the real stakes at play, that if the Russians started a war, we really shouldn't be game playing with the sake of Europe being in the balance at that point, and with the Russians possibly attempting to steamroll them. So it would be smart for the Europeans to take an action like this to ensure that if a war starts, they don't end up seeing that the United States might try and hamstring their own collective defense from the sidelines while not really being involved at all and even fighting alongside them. But moving us on out of that news, we have also been able to hear of some other significant developments that have happened around the world today. We have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another major drone attack against the Russian Federation, which is currently ongoing, at least at this moment right now. And we do understand that oil infrastructure such as refineries, terminals, and pumping stations are the likely targets, which we also would analyze would be accurate as well, considering the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces have been significantly attacking pumping stations in particular as of late, to be able to try and knock out Russia's oil export capabilities to their ports and also overland into the European Union. And we've also seen that oil refineries have also become a target of highlighted importance at this point as well, as they continue to try and cause as much economic damage to the Russian Federation as possible. It's Ukraine's hope that they're able to compound the economic damage to such a degree that instead of Russia being able to take drastic actions in its last dying breaths or last dying clutches, they may just economically collapse so badly that the war is no longer continuable for the Russian Federation, and they might have to peace out just due to the fact that it's no longer financially feasible for the Russian government to be able to carry out the war against the state of Ukraine, or against anybody else for that matter. We've also been able to hear that additionally, these drone attacks have started to show significant damage in some areas of the country, including in Dagestan. Many people know the meme, send to Dagestan 3 years and forget. And apparently we are now remembering. Apparently there is no send to Dagestan 3 years and forget. You must remember, because right now, Dagestan, and specifically the small port city of Kaspisk, just south of Makhachkala, is under attack at this moment right now, and appears to be in a little bit of a pickle. Let's take a look at what the Ukrainians have been able to manage. It took W.
A little bit of a slow flyer, it looks like. Someone's taking pot shots at it.
Opa! We also saw this clip here showing what appears to be a drone that did explode overhead, or possibly an impact on the ground with the smoke rising from the explosion. We're not clear which, but it does clearly show us that right now there is an attack happening in this port on Dagestan. We also were able to see some additional clips as well here showing what appears to be air interception fire over the area of the city. Opa!
Wow. A drone blew up.
Oh, look, they're going to go examine the debris. We also,
Oh, man, that's really dumb. That's really stupid. Don't ever go stand over debris of something that was just exploded. It could explode again, possibly.
it certainly could, but, you know, safety is the last thing that they prioritize in Russia. We also get to see here another clip of the drone that was shot down over this area of the port. And we also got to see from this clip here as well, one of these drones flying on over and then getting hit by Russian air defense. So it does look like the one drone that we saw on film was taken down, but it also does appear that we were able to get some additional reports that there were more drones that we did not see on film that did attack Kaspisk, and we're still waiting for further information to come out to show us the extent of the damage and the destruction that may have been caused on critical port facilities within this area of the port. Moving us on out of the town of Kaspisk, it's time for us to move on over to the other end of the Russian Don region, or more so the Caucasus Mountain region, to be able to get us on and into the port of Tuapse. Many of y'all will have known of the major port attack that Ukraine conducted against Tuapse several days ago, almost a week ago at this point, really, and the extent and damage that was caused to the port facility during that time. Many people have largely started to believe that the fire would eventually die down, as most fires there are caused by the Ukrainians' attacks on oil infrastructure in Russia usually die down within at least a couple of days, usually 3 to 5 days, usually. However, this attack ended up producing what we can only describe as apocalyptic amounts of damage. This is the sea, or the Black Sea, which is quite literally black now, on the coastline of Tuapse.
Oh my goodness. That is just pure sludge on the top of the water.
That's literally sludge that makes up the beach now. It's all just oil.
Is that guy shoveling it? Oh my god, look at that. It is thick. That is literally like feet thick. Did you see that guy with a shovel? Go back for a second.
Jeez.
Holy crap.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. And this is their way to clean it up, is send out one guy with a garden shovel?
It looks like they have about a dozen guys with these vats that they're loading the oil into. But this has gotten pretty bad. I mean, this went from a very successful Ukrainian attack to an absolute ecological disaster that's now happened around the port of Tuapse, because now we're seeing that the oil is returning back to the ground in the sea below the city because of the rainfall from yesterday, and also just due to its density, and it's beginning to amalgamate itself into these slick oil sludges inside of the sea. The waves washing up onto the beach are literally solid black and filled with oil as well, and the entire of the surrounding coastline as well has also been covered in a nice film of black oil. Everything is covered in this stuff almost at this point.
I feel like if Tuapse was anywhere else other than Russia, they might have ordered an evacuation of the entire place by now, because it was raining oil the other day. It was literally raining down oil on people's heads as they were walking around the city. And now you got it washing up on the beaches too. So, I mean, this is literally an ecological disaster at this point, a pretty large scale.
It's unbelievable, really. Here's also another little glimpse of the situation right now as well. Look at that. That is all oil.
Jeez. They've got even those little barrier things trying to like keep it in, but it looks like it's really not doing a good job of it.
No, not at all. It's so thick. It's just seeping on through anyways.
Jeez, that is bad. And can you imagine how much of that chemicals are leaching from the sludge into the water? Like, that water is screwed.
Yeah, it's definitely contaminated, that's for sure. Here's another video here showing the thickness of it. And there's the clip from the beach, but we're going to skip that one, and we're going to move y'all on into the next glimpse that we got into Tuapse today, as this was a picture taken off of the coastline of the continuing fire. And this is unbelievable. Let me show you all a picture that this reminds me of here. Eruption of a Mount.
Mount Vesuvius.
Yes, you were remembering the one with the bombers flying past it in the middle of World War II. Let me go see if I can find that image. I mean, this basically looks like the eruption of a volcano, nearly.
Except Mount Vesuvius didn't have petroleum in it, to my knowledge, but it looks similar, though, in the plume. And it's crazy. They have not been able to put this thing out. Like, this might be the longest running oil fire I think I've seen in Russia in years, like when it comes to just the sheer length of it.
It is unbelievable. I mean, the fire that and the smoke that this thing has caused and the amount of damage. I mean, you can even see in this picture here, look at this, Matthew. You can literally see the giant oil sludge on the water. It's like this brownish color in the picture, and the rest of the water that's not contaminated is a somewhat bluer hue. Do you see that?
Yeah, I kind of do a little bit. Did it just leach out from the actual refinery into the water, like straight from the facility, or did it rain into the water, or how did it exactly get there?
It's just flow, like because of the silos being ruptured in the fire, the oil that isn't catching on fire is just literally seeping over from the ruptured tanks into the river and then flowing on out into the Black Sea. So to show you this in a better example here, these tanks somewhere within this area are the ones that are believed to be on fire. The oil then leaks out of the tanks down this hill right here into the Tuaps River, which is the Reka Tuaps, and then flows down the Reka Tuaps out into the mouth of the river right here, and then on out into the Black Sea, which is where we're seeing all of that sludge on the coast.
Now, you know what's fascinating about this in a sort of morbid way is that when people were saying they were not in favor of hitting the oil depot like tanks on Karg Island near Iran, this is actually what it would look like to a large degree if they did that. Like, it would leak out the exact same way you're seeing here into the nearby water, and it would cause a huge slick like that if they hit Karg Island near Iran, which I've never advocated for that, by the way. I said if they wanted to hit Karg Island, they could hit the oil loading like little like piers that go out to the ships. They could hit those and it would take it out. But, hitting the actual tanks themselves, it caused ecological disasters like this, which is pretty horrendous.
I would say, though, the difference between us and them in Ukraine is that we are in the position largely to choose, and we don't have to conduct that action. It isn't necessary, and it wouldn't really achieve our war goals. But the Ukrainians are in an actual battle for their survival, and they're trying to take any action they can to defeat the Russians, considering that if they don't, they might end up going the way of the pages of history. So I would say that this is a unfortunate tragedy that's happening right here in Tuaps right now, but at the same time, the Ukrainians really have no choice at all at this point. Like, the U.S. has basically packed up shop and hardly supports them. Europe is supporting them as much as they can. We've done really nothing recently to try and help out the Ukrainians in not conducting these attacks, because we lifted the sanctions that were stopping these ports from being incredibly usable, and now they're highly usable again to the Russians to be able to load up and ship out oil. So the Ukrainians have to be able to ensure that the Russians do not economically recover or rebound at any point, and so they have to hit these sorts of oil ports. Otherwise, the Russians could keep the war going longer than the Ukrainians may be able to continue to finance their own end of the conflict.
Yeah, that could be the case. I would see a little bit of a difference, but still, though, it's still painful to see like such a disaster like this, because it's going to have probably decades-long effects in the area, I'd imagine. But it is a war, and this kind of stuff does happen, but it's obviously not preferable.
Certainly not preferable, but I can certainly see the Ukrainian position as to why they're doing this. We also got to see that someone made almost like Chernobyl HBO miniseries style clip here, showing the fires in Tuaps and everything else that has followed as well. And I actually had to say, this is pretty well made, because it basically summarizes the entire situation as we're seeing it right now in Tuaps. We can see the fires inside of the city, the smoke enveloping it, the continued video showing the desolation, people covered in nothing but oil from the rain, the shorelines covered in it as well.
Oh man, it's always the poor birds. They always get caught up in the oil and stuff like that. Like, I remember seeing those commercials where the soap manufacturers were like trying to clean the birds from the oil spill in the Gulf down there at the Gulf of Mexico. It's just always tragic what happens to the wildlife.
It is always unfortunate. I hate to see it. And imagine, folks, the ecological damage that this is going to do. Many of these fish that are living within this area of the Black Sea are now going to be tainted and not fit for human consumption. And tons of, well, in Russia, they wouldn't give a shit. They'd still let people buy them and eat them. But here in America and other countries that would care about their citizens, we would basically have to tell all of those fishing companies that use that area as their fishery that they could not fish and sell the fish from those areas because they're contaminated and no longer fit for consumption. That's something that's, a lot of people don't think about that when we talk about wildlife, but that's generally what I talk about, folks, when I think about keeping things ecologically intact, is that if you don't, there's a huge impact to the food supply chain that all of y'all eat from, and not only that, there's a huge hit to some people who make their livelihoods out there fishing on the high seas. It's a very unfortunate thing to see in general. But with that, we are going to be moving on out of that little bit of news into ops, and we are going to be moving on up and into the area of Taganrog and Rostov-on-Don, as we also were able to see reports that the Russian Federation state media has reported that there are missile attacks. Apparently, they showed a storm shadow of some sort attacking the areas of Taganrog and Rostov-on-Don. So it does appear that there is some sort of an ongoing missile attack alert within that area. We haven't been able to confirm any direct impacts as of this moment within those regions, but we are still waiting to get any additional video or picture evidence or eyewitness reports to give us an understanding as to whether or not the Ukrainians were able to land any successful hits inside of Russia and what exactly the damage may show us as to what the Ukrainian strategy is right now and what they're planning on taking out. But moving us on out of that and on up into Luhansk, while everything was going on inside of the Russian Federation's actual territory, we also got to see that significant military actions were also happening against the Russian Federation's armed forces inside of Lugansk. We were able to see that the Russians were getting absolutely torched in Luhansk overnight. So here's the clip. What do we have here? Oh! Opa!
Oh, man. Looks like Luhansk is getting a little bit of a thrashing.
Let's take another look at it. We have some more clips of this. Opa! Oh, quite
wow.
the fire.
Is that another oil? Is that another oil facility that caught on fire? It looks like it's something burning secondary on the ground.
We're not entirely sure. It looks like it might actually be some sort of a fuel hub for the Russian army. We're thinking it might be that, but we haven't gotten enough information yet to be sure. It might also be an electrical substation as well. These have been, electrical substations have been a high priority target to hit over the past several weeks and have made up the statistical majority of the attacks and damage that we're able to confirm. So it might be a substation or it might be some sort of an oil station inside of Luhansk as well. We also got to see a little bit more of this here in this clip. Oh, you hear the air defense fire and the incoming drone.
Yeah, apparently the police are outside too.
Police, Bliat!
Oh crap, flew right over their head.
Is that an Amazon delivery drone? I don't think so. It didn't drop off my package, Bliat. Well, moving us on from that, we also got to see another picture of the fire in Luhansk. So there were some significant impacts inside of Luhansk today, successful ones. We're not exactly sure how it's going to be impacting the Russian army, but once we get further information on what exactly was hit, we'll be able to give you all a better sort of an analysis on how that might impact the Russian armed forces within this area over the immediate future. We also saw that there were some explosions within Donetsk Gorod as well, which is very nice to see as on top of what we just saw in Lugansk, Bliad. Ah, yeah. A little air defense fire there.
It's a drone flying in.
Opa, Bliad. Oh, it turned off the engine. It's gliding in. Oh, and there's the hit.
Oh, no. Holy crap.
Dang, it's a fireworks show. Like, oh my God.
That was a big, they must have hit something with munitions in it. That sounded pretty deep.
That sounded like a very good hit. Might have been an ammunition depot, or it may have been some sort of a Russian barracks, possibly. We're not entirely sure what that one was either at the moment. We're still trying to get the damage assessments out and the geolocations and such to be able to see exactly what was hit and what kind of damage was caused. But it does appear the Ukrainian long-range strikes in the Russian Federation were quite successful over the course of this day, as you all can all obviously see. with that in mind, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of the news that we have for the night, which we have a lot of it coming out of the Middle East and elsewhere. I mean, quite a great deal of it, quite a significant amount of it over the course of this day. We're going to be saving the Ukrainian frontline breakdown for just a little bit later in the show. We do have some very good news to report from the front lines today, but we'll be getting to that here in just a little bit. In the meantime, though, we are going to be moving on down into the Middle East and covering all of the developments that have happened down here today. I'm generally classifying most of these as medium priority today, not high priority, because while there has been some developments, they're not exactly game-changing developments, and they're also not improving our situation that much at the moment, at least literally. I mean, in potential they could be, but we're not really sure how it's going to play out at this point. But before we move on into that, I do have to say a humongous thanks to everyone who has been watching this channel so far tonight. 19,500 people were here at the peak, and 78,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to consider this channel to be your primary source of news. We put a lot of pride and honor in our work, and we like to make sure that we were able to report the best kind of news and also the most analyzed sort of news that we can. And I hope that we've been able to meet that criteria for all of y'all tonight on another breaking news story that we were able to get out of Europe today, with the clear actions that are working towards the pre-mobilization or pre-war phase of a major conflict between the Western sphere or the European sphere and the Russian Federation. Before we move on into the rest of our major news for the night coming out of the Middle East and elsewhere around the world, I do want to make sure that we take a brief moment here to be able to get a couple of questions from the chat, to be able to chit-chat with a couple of y'all. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and also, by the way, before we get to those 3 super chat questions, I am hearing some allegations right now on some of the Russian back channels. I believe they are claiming, and I sadly don't have a direct translation for it, so I'm trying to piece together what it says here. It looks like the Russians are currently panicking, and they're warning people on Telegram that apparently there's been a 2,000-kilometer plus strike in the mainland Russian territory, but I'm not sure exactly where the strike has targeted. But I'm hearing some early reports that apparently Ukraine's conducted a very long-range strike into somewhere. So I'll be trying to figure out where that is. But in the meantime, though, getting into our first super chat, this one's going to go to Nick Hines. And thank you very much, Nick, for that massive $100 support. And thank you very much for supporting the channel with that generous support. And Nick said, would waging war with Europe just cause Russia to collapse even faster? And they have to be running out of suitable people to add to their army.
Generally, it could, actually. That's a very good question, Nick. And I would have to say that it could lead to the Russian Federation collapsing quicker, but the Russians are most likely only going to take this sort of inaction if they believe that their collapse is inevitable either way. So whether they collapse quickly or not at that point, it would be irrelevant, because they would know the collapse is a certainty, and this may be their last-ditch attempt at being able to try and avoid a complete collapse by taking the most drastic and most dangerous action that could be undertaken for themselves and for us as well. So I would generally say generally, yes, that actually is correct. Economically and militarily, that period of time would be the most devastating to the Russian Federation that they have yet seen, but they would generally be expecting that they wouldn't be around long enough anyways for that to truly bring them down, because a nuclear exchange will have most likely happened by then, and a strategic nuclear exchange may be happening soon after that would see that the Russians never completely economically collapse, they just completely cease to exist. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And I gotta say that it's a wonderful and incredible thing to see that so many people like you have enjoyed this channel and helped us to keep this thing running. And before we move on into our next one, I actually have been able to read the statements that have been put out, because it does appear that the Russians are panicking at this moment about a specific attack, and it does appear, folks, that we were able to see that this is apparently the Tobolsk airport. Because this actually says in Russian here, because some of y'all may or may not know this, but I can actually read Russian. This says, Aeroport Tobolsk, Remensov, right here. So if we pull that up, here is Tobolsk. I'm pretty sure that this is the Tobolsk airport right here. So it looks like some sort of...
How far is that from the border?
Pretty damn far. I mean, like, this is over the Urals, actually.
Oh my God. I mean, you're saying, okay, wait a minute. The Russians are claiming that Ukraine struck all the way out there from Ukrainian territory?
Apparently. Let me check this here
really quickly. What the hell?
Okay, do some translations for me real quickly from miles to kilometers. Put in about 1,340 miles and see what that turns into in kilometers. I think that's pretty close to being 2,000 kilometers, actually.
It's 20,985.
It can't be 20,000 because that wouldn't add up. It's like I think there might have been something incorrectly input there because. How
many miles again? Let me try it again. How many miles do you say?
1,340 miles.
Let's see here. 2,156 kilometers. Actually, I think I put in one too many zeros there.
Yeah, I guess I was like, dude, 20,000 kilometers. I was like, bro, that would literally be circumnavigating the whole globe. Like, I was like, that's not happening.
Ukraine's upgraded to ICBMs. They got the Minuteman now.
Man, you said 20,000 kilometers. I was like, bro, that can't happen, man. I was like, bro, that ain't working. The math ain't mathing. I was like, beyond that, this is lining up. I mean, this does appear to be the location. It looks to be a smaller airport as well, possibly used by the Russian Ministry of Emergency Services and the Russian Army, possibly, because it looks to be mostly poorly. It actually is a completely unmaintained airstrip. Most of it's actually overgrown, and the runway is basically fading away. And the only thing they really have is one part of the strip that is an operational helipad, and that's about it. Also, someone said, look in the parentheses. Yeah, we did in Remensov, and this is the Remensov area. And this lines up also with the distance as well. So this all appears to be lining up at the moment. And let's see, this one says the Tolminskaya Oblast. And this is, I wish we knew what oblast this was. I think, yeah, this is the Tyumen Oblast, because that's what that is. It's the Tyumenskaya Oblast, which is the Tyumen Oblast. So this all is adding up. This is exactly where this happened, and we're getting initial reports of this moment right now, breaking news in a significant sense, that apparently this airport here has been brought under a direct attack by Ukrainian armed forces at a distance of around 1,300 miles, and has apparently suffered some significant hits. We don't know if there's
any hit that. Would it be a Flamingo that would do that? Because I'm seeing everybody in the chat say the Flamingo's got the longest range on it, which it does have a very long range. But could it be a drone, or would it have to be a cruise missile of some sort to reach that far? Because I think this is one of the longest range attacks, if it turns out to be true, I've heard about.
Yes, I think it might be a flamingo. We do know that flamingos have this range. It is the biggest bird, after all. I'm the biggest bird. I'm the biggest bird. So generally, I think that it's definitely a flamingo that may have conducted this attack. But it brings the question, with it being such a small helipad for the larger part, what was the importance in specifically striking and destroying this? The Ukrainians will probably explain that, folks, over the next few days as to why this was targeted and hit. But at the moment, I would say it's a bit of a mystery, unless if there's some larger element of the Russian Army's rotary aviation that was somehow based here at this airport that would make it a necessity to get hit. I don't really see what the importance of hitting this was at the moment right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either, personally. They must have had a really good piece of intelligence about some very important asset being here, because to spend a Flamingo possibly on a strike that long range, it had to be something important. So I'll be very curious to find out.
Well, would you look at that? It's like a giant Gazprom facility out here.
You think they could have hit that instead?
They could have. I mean, it's definitely not out of the question. I mean, maybe they hit the airport and there's something else coming in for this large refinery or gas facility right here, because this appears to be, if I was a Ukrainian commander, folks, I would generally say this would be the target to hit in this area instead of the little helipad. This thing would cause a pretty decent amount of economic damage to the Russians, especially if they land a good hit. So they might be hitting this as well, or that report might have been misplaced and someone just misheard the explosion and in a panic reported it in the wrong location in Russia, and it was actually off to the east of Tobolsk and somewhere around this major facility right out here. I mean, this one is huge. I mean, look at its rail yard for tank cars. I mean, this thing is handling significant, like this thing is handling an unbelievable volume of traffic every day. It's dealing with hundreds of cars daily. So this would be a very significant economic target to hit, because its output alone would have to be huge just from its rail yards alone.
Yeah, I would say so, for sure.
I would definitely say so. Well, we're going to be keeping an eye on this one, folks, and hopefully we'll be able to get some video and picture evidence out. Can we? Oh, look, you can actually go down in Tobolsk town. Let's take a look at this place. Let's get an idea of what just got hit. God.
Oh, it's very Soviet. It's very Soviet. Wide, big streets, a lot of industrial stuff at the perimeter of the city, and a little bit of that Sovietness in the center.
Man, these guys out here, man, they get out that guitar every afternoon and they go, "Chornaya voz, это полич, тазич tepi."
People say, why do they act like they have no hope? They're so hardcore. They live in survival mode. Well, zoom in on the side of the building for a second. Let's see the side of that building. I mean, this might explain why they're kind of depressed just a little bit, because the architecture is kind of depressed. I mean, they literally have like fenced in the balcony with like some type of mesh on the side of that building
a
right there.
mosquito net. Like the mosquitoes are so big around here, you can hear them flying in like a Ukrainian drone, and they just grab you and take you away, like you're never seen again. Let's see. Let's go look, folks, at the almighty suburbs of this town. Oh Jesus, folks, this is gonna be rough. Oh.
Oh my! Oh dear! At least the roads are in good shape. I will say that. Probably because nobody has a car.
Man, this is the only one that the Google car would go down. It wouldn't go down these, which are the actual roads of the suburb. It only went down the main road. Oh my God!
Oh man! Oh my goodness! It looks like a freaking grizzly bear got a hold of the garbage can. But also, it's like it's really easy to keep up roads and stuff when you barely have any like road traffic on it. Like there's just one car a day driving over the road. Your roads last a lot longer that way.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. This place is so bad off. Like it's like that village that Borat went to in like the second movie he made. Like he's like, I go back to America. It's like that. Like it looks just like it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty hideous looking. I don't know what's up with the Russian obsession. It's got a fellow walking down the street. But I don't know what's up with the Russian obsession with putting up blue roofs on everything. Like it's the most tacky looking thing.
Man, they want everything to look like a hospital, like, because you got to be damn ill to live in a country like this, man. Like, jeez. Oh my God, this is terrible, really. I mean, like, to imagine, folks, that people always talk about we need to be like Russia. It's like, I think we need to not be like Russia. Oh my God, it's a lot of. Oh my God, and it's packed. It's got a whole family in there.
It's packed to the brim. My goodness, I didn't know those things could hold that many people. That thing. Look at how like narrow that car is. Like they're like literally sitting on each other's laps.
Oh my God, dude! And then look, like the roads. Is that? I like how they just have like basically like the many landfills around the trash cans. Like nobody can just put their trash in the can. They just kind of like toss it in the general direction. And if it lands on the ground, it stays there for 30 years. But look at these dirt roads. Like that's what the actual neighborhood streets are. Like this is the main paved road, but the rest of them are literally just dirt roads. Golly.
Oh man, the town clown car rolling by like Michael Myers through the town. Look at this thing. Look at that. It's like the thing that dude went up to Alaska and like hung out there, and then the bear got him or something like that. The dude was writing literature in the thing like up there. I don't know what his name was. What was it? That something McCandless or something like that?
Yeah,
I think it was like there was a book about it.
Dude, look at this house. It's sunk into the ground.
It's like the haunted looking house type of like window, like frames they got on that window right there.
Golly, dude. I mean, Russia is a very depressing place. This guy just has a 5 years supply of firewood in the wide open, which also, by the way, folks, I gotta say, I mean, not to really diss on them or anything. I mean, they're already living in what can only be described as damn impoverished third world conditions. But aren't you supposed to put the firewood under like a protected awning so that way it doesn't get damp? Because, if it gets damp, it can end up rotting, and also it can end up not, actually being good firewood. Isn't that kind of defeating the whole purpose of having that much firewood?
It looks fresh, though, whatever it is. Very fresh. What else does town got to offer real quick, though? Not to rabbit hole too much, but what else they got? Oh, there's somebody waiting in the bus stop right there. That was kind of scary. But let's see what else they got.
They have the Krasno i Beloy, which is a grocery store.
This?
Christ almighty.
I was about to say the first one was kind of rough. This was even worse. This got worse. I think I would have to go find some food somewhere else. I'd be a little bit too scared to go to this one.
They don't even have a view. Jesus.
Oh.
Good God, that roof is literally caved in.
Man, it's like the wonky Willy Wonka's chocolate house or something like that. It's like the roof's caving in.
They don't even have anything of this grocery store. Apparently, it's in this building, like it's in the damn Bakami block. This one, there it is. It's literally a store built in the Kami block.
That looks like the entrance to Ammunition on GTA 5, like the way they had that painted up red and like the little staircase leading up to the doors and stuff. It kind of looks like that.
Now let's go into the central city really quickly. Oh, look at this. We have the restaurant of Mark Elev. So let's take a look at this one.
This is pretty high-end dining for this place.
They go from their shithole to this one nice restaurant, bro. Like they had to bring in one nice restaurant. I wonder how much this costs. Okay, that's not that nice. This is literally just an onion and hay. Like that's not.
Is that a freaking acorn?
This thing?
It looks like a jumbo acorn, like they cut in half.
No, that's an onion that they cut the top off of, and then they put it back on, and then they put it in a nest of hay and straw.
And that's why I thought it looked like an acorn.
Oh, look at this. The old Russian delicacy of Chernobyl shit and gonads. Everybody loves that one. Bro, I mean, let me find one store. Let's see. Here we go. I think this is, I'm not understanding. What
looks
the
like North
hell?
Korea. Oh, they got those wet markets in Russia, too? I thought those were only in China.
This is unsanitary as hell. Imagine the parasites that are going to be put on these things while they're sitting out here. Good God. Like, oh, man, Russia, you're so damn nasty.
There's no ice in there. No ice. It's literally sitting on bare metal.
Bro, just sitting there in the heat. Like, just getting all the sweet parasites you can imagine festering inside of it before you buy it. Oh, my God. This place is, look, unbearably it. But this place,
I think it's a phony.
What the hell is that place? Is that like the cartel hit room or something?
Man, it looks kind of scary. Like that lighting does not do it any favors.
This is the real food. Chunks of random meat, might be horse, and then potato in like very, very light water, like seasoned water is what they call it. It's super it. I gotta tell y'all, folks, this place, it's rough. It's pretty rough. That was a long
It is very rough.
Like that was just
very rough. I tell you gotta have a little bit of that out in the middle of nowhere. Oh man.
So that's the place that's being attacked right now, by the way, folks. God bless the lingerie stores and all that stuff. I don't think they're getting hit anyway, so who cares about them? But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on back into our questions. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support, Nick. I hope that has addressed that well and also get you all the breaking news. And with that, we are on to the second question of this segment.
And this one goes to Chef Danny B, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for supporting the channel once again. And he said, good evening, enforcers. Good evening, LSA. Chef Danny here. Actually, in early. I get to watch the whole stream for once in LLT, LSA.
Hey, and we're happy to have you here, Chef of the LSA, Chef Danny B. And I gotta tell you, Chef, I really, really needed you today. I went to Costco, and I didn't get myself a Costco chicken. Matthew told me a story about one that he got recently that kind of scared me away from him. I saw it, and I went, oh, and so I kind of didn't get one. But I got this other thing. And it was pretty okay, but I could have gone for a warm meal. It was a cold one. It was like a cold salad kind of a thing. Kind of like that orzo salad, but a little bit different. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. And we are happy to have had you here since basically the start of the stream, Chef Danny B. And we hope that you've been enjoying it so far. And so big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment. And then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
And the last one also goes to Chef Danny B. He puts in another $50 support. And a huge shout out to you, Danny, for the second support of the night. He said, Chef Danny again. And do y'all see Russia using tactical nukes by any chance? And just curious, an LLT, LSA.
I see them using tactical nukes if they get into a full-blown war with NATO. That might end up being a possibility if all of the cards are played poorly by everyone, and then they're basically forced to do that. They might start doing that, but I don't really see it in any other situation outside of that one. So I do hope that that does address that incredibly well, Chef Danny Beaton, and a big thanks to you once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to report the news nice and good like we do every day. And so with that, folks, it's now time for us to move on from all of the fun that we just had in Europe, talking about a new war. Yay! I'm just being sarcastic with that. And also the Ukrainians doing what they do, obliterating the Russians daily. It's now time for us to move on to something that's a little bit slightly more bleak, which is the Middle East. So let's start getting into the news down here today. Starting us off on the American side, we were able to hear that the United States was planning to conduct further economic sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Later on in the day, closer to the stream, we did get to hear that the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control announced a new round of sanctions Friday targeting the Iranian oil trade and shadow fleet, levying sanctions against the China-based independent teapot refinery Hengli Petrochemical, or the Dalian Refinery Company Limited, along with 19 tankers and a number of crypto wallets utilized by the Central Bank of Iran. So it does appear that the United States has taken more economic sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. That'll teach them. Meanwhile, the Iranians have claimed that they seized another ship today, making sure that everyone will be terrified of even getting close to the Strait of Hormuz, if that story is accurate. Meanwhile, the Iranian government also stated within their capital today that Ghalibaf has stepped down as the head of the negotiating team due to internal disagreements. And a lot of people would go, oh, yay, that means that the Iranian peace lovers are winning, and surely we'll talk. Well, you'd be mistaken. They've actually had him step down so that way hardliners could start to replace him and make sure that the Iranians quite truly never negotiate, and they are always going to be conducting maximalist demand attempts and negotiations from this point on. So this actually means that the Iranians are solidifying their position as wanting to continue the war and not continue talks with the United States to be able to try and end it. We also were able to hear that the Iranians iterated multiple times today that they will not attend talks with the United States until the American blockade ends, but privately, Iranian officials have been exchanging messages with Pakistan and engaging in diplomacy to resume talks, the officials said. We also were able to additionally hear that they once again reiterated that they are not talking, and any messages or communications can be relayed through Pakistan as an intermediary. And apparently, we've now been able to hear that the Iranian chief of police has stated that they've uncovered a U.S.-Israeli plan to foment protests in Iran and cause national unrest, primarily through the field of cyberspace. That would be the internet. He says Iran carried out numerous arrests related to the alleged plot.
Wait a minute. What they said it was going to be a cyberspace attack, but they arrested people in real life. How's that a cyberspace attack if they're arresting people in real life?
I don't know. Like honestly,
that doesn't even make any sense. It's like you don't have to be physically in Iran to conduct a cyber attack on their networks. You can do that remotely from a different country. So it's like that sounds like an excuse just to start arresting people they don't like or something. But also, by the way, are they not aware that there's literally Mossad agents crawling all over the place? Like occasionally you'll see a random explosion in Tehran or something. That's most likely Israeli agents doing that for the most part, or it's people that's been recruited that are very hostile Iranians to the regime that are carrying that out, one or the other. But that story doesn't make any sense they put out.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense at all, really. But, they're going around conducting more mass arrests. So we have that at least to go off of. We also were able to hear that apparently multiple governments, Britain, Russia, India, China, and Turkey, have urged their citizens to leave Iran within 24 hours. We've also been able to hear that apparently the highway... We're not going to mention that. We're not going to mention that. I saw it, and I kept, I locked in so hard on that. You started laughing there at the end. I was just going to completely ignore that. Dude, should we go look at it?
We can probably take a quick look at it. Just show it briefly.
Oh boy.
And, oh man, this is what our RAM cost way too much money for, is this type of stuff. Oh my god.
I mean, it's actually kind of looking pretty realistic. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the AI is getting, it's improving month over month, but we also got to hear that the Tehran-Pardis freeway in Iran has been shut down for the next 24 hours due to an incident. The Red Crescent has been deployed to the scene for relief efforts. We believe it might be a landslide, but we're not entirely sure on that one. Anyways, moving us on out of Tehran, we also did get to hear that within Israel today, there were a large number of tankers seen at the Tel Aviv-Yaffo International Airport. And look at that, they Yaffoed and they found out. Oh boy, I love that saying. And I also love the saying of warriors and being like the trad dude, being really scared of your own emotions and everything. Really love that stuff. But we can see here that there was a lot of KC-46s and KC-135s around the area of the Tel Aviv-Yaffo International Airport. I mean, just look at them.
It looks like you can't complain about Israel anymore because they let the U.S. planes land at Ben Gurion and fly through their airspace.
Man, I guess you're right. Also,
we love Israel.
Man, I tell you, man.
It's obligatory. Who am I to go against the grain?
Man, who are we? You know what? Some people have been saying that there's been a really big push to like Israel. I like to say it's completely natural.
Man, have you seen that guy from what is it, Argentina? I think it is. That he's over there in Israel, going crazy and acting wild and stuff like that. Dude's over there acting like a fool. Yeah, he's acting like a fool in Israel. I think he's going home in a day or two, but he's been over there acting like a fool.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I mean, someone who looks like him, I just expect him to kind of act like a fool because, I mean, just to be straight up with y'all, he looks like a hobbit from like the movie The Lord of the Rings.
Man, if they ever have like a movie that requires like a werewolf characteristic right here, can pull that off with no makeup required.
Wait, hang on, let me go pull this up. Like, y'all gonna see this, folks? Y'all aren't gonna be able to unsee it. This guy literally looks like Bilbo Baggins from
Oh my God,
like Lord of the Rings and shit. He literally looks just like him.
Yeah, he really does look similar, by the way. He needs to get rid of those sideburns ASAP.
So he's going to start talking about, I need to go back to the Shire. And it's just like, yeah, I guess you do. And he'll get another $40 billion bailout from us when he runs the Argentinian economy, or it kind of naturally does that down there in Argentina anyways. They always economically collapse like every 8 years. But we'll make sure to give him another $40 billion to float him a little bit more. But a big shout out to Javier Milei, a.k.a. Bilbo Baggins, really making sure to pull Argentina through the whole deal. Really has done him a good job. But anyways, moving us on out of that, being completely sarcastic about that whole deal, we do understand that a lot of people are talking about the United States placing sanctions on that Chinese refinery and 40 tankers involved in transporting Iranian oil to China. What are y'all thinking about that? What are you thinking about that, Matthew?
Okay, so the U.S. has placed sanctions on China, which is a pretty decent move because China right now, the tensions are a little bit heightened because of the Strait of Hormuz blockade by U.S. forces. So what is China going to do about it, if anything? 41% said China will likely get hostile over it, while 39% said China will largely ignore this small move, and while 13% said it seems like a 50-50 chance. And I would say on this one, I have a feeling that China will probably issue a diplomatic statement about it, but they're not going to go too crazy about it. I don't think they'll go too berserk. Now, the one thing that would get China to go crazy is if the U.S. forces decide to carry out their seizure threats on sanctioned vessels, and then all of a sudden they seize a Chinese sanctioned ship. If they did that, that would cause a very big problem. But I doubt the sanctions themselves are going to cause an issue. It might maybe cause some friction between Xi Jinping and the U.S. president, but that's expected at this point. So, nothing too crazy. So I think China will largely ignore it. I'm with the 38%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with the 38% as well. I think that China's largely going to be ignoring the situation as much as they can. So moving us on out of that poll, we've also been able to see that there was aerial tanker activity today around the area of the United Arab Emirates, and we found out why. It appears that the United States Marine Corps F-18s from the halls of Montezuma have arrived here within the Dhafra Air Base just south of Abu Dhabi. Here we can see the tankers, the KC-46 Pegasus, or Pegasi, if we want to call them at this point, that landed here at the airbase along with C-17, most likely providing support aircraft to the F-18s, and the F-18s are probably over here in these nice little awnings inside of the airbase. I can actually show you all this one here really quickly. Would you like to see it? Well, it doesn't matter. You're going to see it. Here's the little tents that the F-18s are in. So that's why we really can't see them, but we can see the tankers, which are conveniently right over here where these A-10 Warthogs were at for some time when the satellite picture was taken. How neat. How cool. Anyways, moving us on out of that little bit of news, it does appear the United States is moving more forces into the area. We also were able to hear that the United States Department of Defense had to confirm today, because nothing ever says, folks, we're doing things right, like really getting headliners for the biggest thing, is that we have 3 aircraft carriers inside of CENTCOM's AOR today, which is the biggest amount that we've had there since 2003. So, I would hope that they'd use that military power to some good, because, having 3 carriers there is really cool for a headline, but it'd be even cooler if we used them for our advantage, like opening the strait or doing something beneficial. But, I don't know. We'll have to see. And obviously, folks, I don't know as much as our great leaders. That, the democratic principle and idea of the citizens actually being knowledgeable and intelligent enough to be able to generally vote in people that would be able to carry out their will instead of the other way around. That's an idea that's long gone in this country. Clearly, our great leaders are way smarter than us weakling peon citizens. Moving us on into Islamabad, we also did get to hear that while the Iranians were claiming that they were not going to be talking to the United States, the Iranian delegation on board a Mirage Airlines A321 did fly into Islamabad, Pakistan today, and the U.S. press secretary told Fox that Kushner and Witkoff will leave for Islamabad on Saturday before talks with the regime delegation, and the IRGC-owned Tasnim denied any talks in Islamabad and called the U.S. media liars. So we don't know who's telling the truth at this moment, and I would like to say that the U.S. will be the one telling the truth, but so far their reliability and their statements over the war so far has been about almost as questionable as the Iranians. So at this moment we don't really know who's telling the truth, and we'll probably have to figure that out once Sunday comes around, and once we find out if there were any talks or not between the two sides. We did get to hear that according to the Iranians, however, they stated that no Iran-U.S. talks would take place during the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi's visit to Pakistan, and a senior Iranian source told Al Jazeera's Ali Hashem that information. Apparently, according to Ali Hashem, he is stating that Abbas Araghchi's delegation is going to talk to the Pakistanis, not to the United States inside of Islamabad. But that might also be a word game as well, and they may actually be intending to talk to the United States through the Pakistanis, but basically engaging in talks all the same while pretending like they're not. So we don't know what it's going to be turning into in Islamabad at some point here in the future, but we'll have to largely see. But moving us on out of that, a lot of people are talking about that footage showing the large number of U.S. Air Force tankers down there in Abu Dhabi, and also the fact that the USS George H.W. Bush is in theater. And a lot of people are talking about what they think is going to be happening soon. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking as well?
All right, so do you think attacks are imminent soon? 58% said yes, attacks will happen over the weekend, while 27% said no, attacks are probably about a week away, and 5% said the U.S. will probably force talks to succeed, and it'll probably end with negotiations. So I don't think negotiations are going anywhere. I think most people know that, by the way. For whatever reason, they're sending Witkoff, the real estate fella, and Kushner, the investor. I'm not even really sure what he does really, but why they're sending those two over there to go talk when they know it's futile is really pointless at this point. So I don't even know what they're doing. Also, I don't know why they're negotiating when we have a Secretary of State that should be doing that instead. So we've gone over that a million times, whatever at that point. But I would say we'll likely see attacks happen about probably in a week or two, I'd imagine, maybe. But I'll be honest, I'm not totally sure at this point because we don't really know, we don't know what the U.S. is doing. Right now, they seem to be floundering a bit with the whole Iran situation. So I'd wait and see. Only time's going to tell on that one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say we might attack over the weekend. We might not. We might be engaging in negotiations. We might not be. If we engage in negotiations, you can always guarantee that nothing's going to come out of that. And then we also have to figure out whether or not we're willing to resume strikes on Iran and be able to conduct any and all necessary actions to this point now to be able to try and recover our strategic situation, which it doesn't really appear that might be the case. So we'll have to just wait and see on everything. At this point, folks, I'm just taking the Middle East day by day. Analysis is completely pointless, even just from day to day. Really have no clue where in the world it's going, and there's really no way to know at all because, one day, they can say one thing and then the next day it's the complete opposite. There's no way to even analyze what goes on down here anymore. It just is what it is. So we'll see. But moving us on out of the Middle East, it is now time for us to get on and over into the Americas, as we were able to hear that Colombia and Venezuela will be apparently announcing military cooperation to combat mafias. I didn't know they had a mafia.
What? Mafias? I thought they had gangs.
I thought they had cartels.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think they have all the above, possibly. It's literally like Criminal Central in South America. It's a free-for-all.
Man, they got mafias, they've got gangs, they've got cartels, they've got syndicates. They got about everything.
They got the favelas.
Man, they got them. They got Flava Flav. Man, they got everything. I mean, it's just an endless list. So we'll have to see what happens down there. But it looks like they're going to try and crack down on the crime. We'll see how that goes. Also, by the way, speaking of actions and developments within the United States of America, we also were able to get a little bit of news today here in the United States. According to the news that came out today, the administration is set to suspend the Jones Act with temporary waivers in an effort to reduce oil prices, which will allow foreign-built ships to transit goods between U.S. ports. And we then heard after that the president had extended the Jones Act waiver for another 90 days, per the White House Assistant Press Secretary Taylor Rogers. The waiver was initially issued on the 18th of March of 2026. I gotta tell y'all, this is a real beauty right here. Nothing ever says protecting the American worker like completely destroying an entire maritime shipping industry by suspending the Jones Act practically indefinitely at this point. And someone's about to say, it's not indefinitely, it's only 90 days. And they're going to extend this again and again and again. And the whole time they'll tell you each time this will be the last time and they'll keep doing it because that's what they've been doing on everything. But we are literally destroying an entire shipping industry that has supported hundreds of thousands of jobs in this country for over a century. It's one thing to say that it would be nice for our overseas territories to see that the Jones Act is suspended, which is true, but that's also coming at the cost of about 400,000 American jobs if we continue to suspend the Jones Act. The reason why this act exists and it's on the books is because foreign shipping companies shipping between U.S. ports is a significant strategic liability. Because if all of the U.S. companies are screwed over by the cheap rates that foreign shippers are able to provide between U.S. ports, if a war starts and all of those port-to-port shipments are run by the Chinese, you know what happens when a war starts? All U.S. port-to-port shipments stop because the Chinese recall all of those ships and they go home. That's why the Jones Act exists. It's largely for strategic logistics reasons. Now, as whether or not it's ripping off the overseas territories, which is a whole other story, and the way to fix that can be done through a myriad of means that doesn't screw us over strategically. But it appears that we are just going to actively destroy every single U.S. shipping company at this point that has thrived under the Jones Act because everyone has to suffer at the end of the day for poor U.S. administration, military planning on the war with Iran. So, you know, I hate to tell y'all, if y'all are, you know, if y'all are in any industry right now that might be propped by the Jones Act, things are going to be getting a lot worse for the business that you work for, or if you own one of those businesses, it's going to be getting worse. And y'all might find that eventually y'all are just pushed out from the rate war that's going to follow because of all these foreign companies coming over and undercutting all of the U.S. run. Moving us on out of that, it is time for us to move on over and back into Europa. Because we still have a lot of news coming out on the front lines in Ukraine. And moving us on and into the area of the war in Ukraine. We've been able to hear some news today, folks, from those front lines. Holy moly, the Ukrainians were really hitting the Russians up there near the city of Sumy today. Man. They're really going for him. Oh, bleh. Opa.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh no. Oh.
Oh, look, a couple of Russians. Oh, a lot of them, actually. That's like a whole fire team. And there's the drone. Get him, boys. Oh my God, the whole house is gone.
Oh my gosh, they brought that they brought down the whole building.
Bro, that thing was brought down like Legos. And we see this Buhanka, which was abandoned in the street, getting hit. Looks like it might have already been hit before. They're going to do it over a second time, just to make doubly sure. Now we see them going towards the woods, towards what appears to be, a Ural 4320. Oh, and a D30 behind it. Well, what do you know, folks? It's the lottery.
Damn. Oh dear, they went in there and it looked like they had a couple of anti-tank mines laying in the corner.
Man, would you look at that?
What is this? What it looks like an MRAP.
That right there, Matthew, was an Akhman armored car.
That's kind of ugly.
It is. Like it's a 6-wheel armored car. I think that's actually pretty gross looking, but when you see them continuing to hit Russian positions all throughout the land.
They're going for this blue house right here. Oh, they went right inside.
Oh, Brad.
They didn't even knock at the door, those rude bastards.
Oh, that was a mortar right there. Oh, wow. It's kind of rare to see.
Well, of course it's mortar. It's a brick house.
A brick and mortar store, the house of corner store. But they really are getting them. Look at that.
Wow. Look at what they're doing.
Wow. I love it. It's beautiful. Moving us on down and into the area of our location unknowns, we got the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well. And according to Miss Deesa, the keeper of the records, are lower than the usual day. Oddly, 4+ tanks is just above the recent average. And I say, it's going to be something else. 910 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the course of the day. Woo-wee! 4 APCs have been knocked out as well. 129 supply trucks and fuel trucks. Finger looking good. 4 main battle tanks. Ooh, spicy. 32 artillery pieces. Holy moly. 1,175 drones. It's good for your health. 1 MLRS. It was a beautiful one. And 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. God dang. I was about to say something else right there, but a wonderful day in the loss report. I mean, it was a pretty decent one. Not the highest numbers that we've seen in infantry losses, but the Ukrainians are still making the Russians pay quite dearly for trying to continue on this war that they were going to lose since day one. Man, I gotta tell you, folks, one thing that you don't really see a lot of here in the States anymore is people saying that the Russians are going to win. Those people kind of just ended up disappearing, really. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the area of the Belgrade Oblast, we also got to see the S-300s getting targeted and destroyed today as well, Bliat.
These are kind of expensive, aren't they?
Hundreds of millions of dollars, Bliat.
Oh, look, there it is, I think. They put what did they put? Winter camo on it,
They put a winter camo net on it.
but it's not even winter anymore.
Don't tell them, man. It's gonna make it harder to see them. Like, man, they're gonna take the shit off. Like, let them think it's still winterable yet. It's only like late April. But there they go.
Oh.
Opa.
The Russian accountants right now are going, quick, Vlad, cook the books extra. We're going in the hole.
Man, they really are cooking those books. Like, bro, they cooked them so hard at the beginning of the war. I think they're literally scorched to charcoal at this point. They can't even try and cook them anymore. Oh, opa! And another blade. Oh, here goes another. Look at them take a run for it. It didn't work out. I tell you. Oh, opa! I tell you, folks, if the Russians would just walk out of Ukraine, because a lot of people every day want to say, oh, these poor, innocent Russians. It's like, man, that's so sad. If only they would just not invade or continue to invade a foreign country, maybe this wouldn't be happening, you know?
Also, by the way, it's like, what are the Ukrainians supposed to do? Just like pack it up and go home and let the Russians. I mean, what they're supposed to do is pack it up and go home and let the Russians roll over their forces, take their cities, invade their capital, and simply say, well, you know, we didn't want to be mean, so I guess I'll go home.
Yeah, I mean, you know, folks, like, if you applied that logic into any other war, that'd be stupid. It'd be like, oh, those poor Germans in the SS, oh, tragedy that the U.S. forces had to take them out. It's like, I mean, really, it's like, you know, it's like, in war, especially with what we've seen with the Russians, I mean, the Russians operate behind the lines a lot like the SS did for the Germans in World War II. Like, when you see what they've done in the occupied territories for a couple of years like we have, you don't really have a lot of sympathy for this. And also, what's the alternative? The Ukrainians give up and surrender, and then the Russians are just able to conduct merciless acts of basically genocide against millions of innocent Ukrainians because we didn't want the poor Russian infantrymen to get hit. So we're just going to let the Russians lash it out on the Ukrainian civilians in the millions instead.
I don't think the Ukrainians are too bothered by the fact they're having to defend their country. I think they're taking much pride in it.
Nah, I don't think they're really too bothered by it. Also, by the way, we did get good news today, folks, that the Ukrainians have been able to push the Russians back in the area around the Severonsky Forest by a good bit, and have been able to inflict some significant losses on the Russian forces in this location. Unfortunately, we don't have any video evidence of that today, but we did get the front line reports, which were quite positive. We also got to see that down in the area of Konstantinivka, we also got to see the Ukrainian armed forces saving one of their wounded soldiers on the battlefield. And they had rock music that ensued. But we see them loading the Ukrainian soldier onto the unmanned ground vehicle, and then the unmanned ground vehicle took him on away. And now they're about to show us everything that happened before and after that part of the clip. You see him moving down the street past a destroyed drone, finding our wounded soldier here, who was hiding in the bushes. And we see them trying to help him out here while they wait for the unmanned ground vehicle to get here to be able to evacuate him. We see here that this drone is filled with a whole bunch of water. They're now throwing the water off of it to be able to take the drone to the wounded soldier and load him onto it and basically use it as a gurney of a sort, or an improvised gurney, to be able to transport him out with.
It's like having a robot dog follow you into the battlefield to get this person. That's probably very handy than having to, like, you know, manually carry them out on a stretcher.
Yeah, really. I bet it's really convenient for them. Makes things easier. And also, it doesn't require them to have like 4 guys on a stretcher team, which is massively beneficial because that means they're able to put some more firepower towards any kind of incoming Russian drones. So we see them now loading him into the cart and putting a blanket over him.
You just load them in there like groceries.
And now he is on the way. We see that they got him back to the position. And it looks like he's checking, I think, for first aid equipment. It looks like he can't
Probably checking for bullet wounds, actually.
Maybe. We see them now taking the wounded man on the way on the drone. And there he goes. We now see them going back towards the position And that was the end of the clip. It's still showing us a successful medical evacuation with a wounded Ukrainian soldier on the unmanned ground vehicle. But moving us on from that, we also got to see that it was a fairly bad day for the Russians down here as well, as the drone forces were continuing to inflict significant losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces within this area, including on this guy right here in the motorbike assault units. Maybe not a good idea to be in the motorbike assault units, or on the Russian infantry, or in the motorbike assault units again.
The Ukrainians did try to warn them, though. Like they went to the college classes and they tried to warn them not to join and sign the contract, but I don't think some listen.
Yeah, I just don't think they do. Isn't it so sad, Matthew, that all of these Russians went and basically volunteered to sign contracts, thinking they were going to get paid massively to go invade a foreign country, and then what they get in return is they get brutally massacred in what is called a war? Isn't that so sad? It's almost like they didn't even know.